Well, most of us think ghosts and goblins only come out during Halloween, but employees at the Tavern restaurant in Abingdon say it's Halloween 365 days a year there.
The Tavern is one of the oldest buildings in Abingdon. It was built around 1780 along the Wilderness Road that stretched from southwest Virginia to Kentucky. Over the years, it has been a bank, bakery, barber shop, general store, cabinet shop, pharmacy, and even an antique store. The first post office in Abingdon was in an addition on the eastern side of the building and was run by George Sandow. The Tavern has played host to many illustrious guests over the years, including Senator Henry Clay, Louis Philippe of France, President Andrew Jackson, and Pierre-Charles L'Enfant, the architect of Washington, D.C. A dwarf named William Bagnell built the Tavern. He and his wife moved from Baltimore, Maryland, and bought the property on the eastern side of Courthouse Hill in downtown Abingdon, Virginia, from John Campbell for 20 euros in 1780. At the time, it was across the street from the courthouse. The Bagnells were a fascinating pair. He was 4 feet 9 inches, and his wife was 6 foot tall. When customers got out of hand after a few drinks, she would toss them out on the street. More than a few have received serious injuries from manhandling. The newly built Tavern was the rally site to recruit men for the upcoming march to Kings Mountain, North Carolina. It stayed in the Dunn family until 1857, when it was sold to a liberated African-American barber known as Thaddeus E. Thad and his wife, Mary Jane Harris. His parents were slaves in the Fractionville community in Abingdon. He renamed the Tavern the Thaddeus Harris House and moved his barbershop in. With such a long and interesting history, there is no wonder there are a few ghost stories about the Tavern. Some of the proposed ghosts are baffling in origin. For instance, a mysterious lady in white occasionally appeared in the kitchen for years, but hasn't been seen in quite some time. A man was shot when caught cheating at poker in the first-floor poker room. His spirit is believed to sometimes appear in the room. Neither gave any indication as to their identity, but other spirits aren't as inexplicable.
First of all, I took over this building. I was not a believer in the belief in ghosts, but I have learned over the years to respect what's happening in this building. I kind of felt like if I cannot see, touch, or smell you, you did not exist. But over the years, I have realized there is somebody else in this building, and we kind of have made a deal with the ghost. We leave here at 11 o'clock at night, and whoever is he or she is in this building comes in, but at 8 o'clock in the morning, he or she has to leave. And we had a great relationship over the last 14 years. We have absolutely had no problem, but it's always been a friendly ghost. But let me tell you, after midnight in here, it does kind of feel kind of spooky. You get goosebumps, and you keep looking over your shoulder. Do I see anybody? No. Do I believe in something? Yes.
Now, tell me a little bit about some of your experiences here at the Tavern.
Well, I worked here for 12 years. Haven't seen a whole lot, but I've bartended for about 5 years, so you're the last person left, so you're closing up at night. So everything gets kind of a little creepy when you're here by yourself at night, or whether you have somebody with you or not. Just because you know the history of the place and things that can go on. We all kind of get freaked out when we walk upstairs. We always get freaked out when we go downstairs. And we've all come to find out since Max has opened up the business. We've been here so long that, we've all become pregnant, or we have families, and we do all that. So we come to find like maybe she might be a woman, because she picks on pregnant women. And I'm saying she from my viewpoint, I don't know. But it seems to be the pregnant ones that experience the happenings. And when I was pregnant, I was bartending here, and I was back behind the bar. And at the time, we kept the bar glasses behind the bar, where now if you go downstairs and you have a shot of it downstairs, there's the liquor bottles are back there. But there used to be glasses back there. And when I was here, a glass actually fell off of the shelf. Didn't just didn't rattle off. It fell kind of projectile, and it hit the bar, which is the wooden bar, and then it fell and it hit the brick, and it never broke. So it couldn't have been like just rattled off of people coming up and down the steps or anything like that. So that's the first thing I saw. And then another time, I wasn't the one pregnant this time, but my friend was the one pregnant this time. And she was going to get some bread off of the microwave. Like, we bake our bread fresh every day, and we put it on top of the microwave, and we cut it as customers come in. And we were cutting the bread, and there's a piece of bread, I mean a whole loaf of bread that was wrapped up, and it just projectile flew at her. It was the craziest thing I ever seen. It's like somebody pushed it, just like the glass. And I've never seen anything like it before in my life. And that's my 2 experiences with it. But with closing up here at night, I would talk to her. And I kind of gave her a name. I called her Mary Catherine. That was just my name I gave her. I don't know why. And it kind of gave me chill bumps when I said it. But that's just the name that I gave her. I was like, okay, Mary Catherine, I'm closing up tonight. I don't want anybody to mess with me, you know. Because I believe. And I think she's probably a nice ghost. So.
And now we're coming up to the 3rd floor of the Tavern, which used to be the hospital during the Civil War. And that's what they had, all the hospital beds. They had 12 beds up here. The Martha Washington Inn was the primary hospital in the town of Abingdon. And this one time it became the overflow hospital. And if you look at the walls, you still have the numbers on the walls. There's bed space number 10. Behind the young man there is bed space number 9, but there was 12 bed spaces up here. And the story I can tell you up here, who I took over the building in 1994, we had a gentleman which used to put in the air conditioning and heating system here. And we called him up and said, look, how does the system work? Because it wasn't really built to code. He met us in here and he explained how everything works in the building. The only thing he said, I will never ever come in after it gets dark in here. And we're going, why not? And he said he was up here one night at midnight and the power went out and the numbers on the wall turned red. Bloody red. No blood running out, just bloody red. And he said, call me anytime, but don't you ever call me when it gets dark. And we totally respected his wishes. We never called him after it got dark. And it's just an eerie feeling up here on the 3rd floor. After midnight you kind of get goosebumps. You're looking around, you're trying to see who's behind you, and you never see nothing, but it's just a very, very eerie feeling.
Another legend concerns a ghost known by semi-offensive name of Tavern Tart. She's believed to be the spirit of a prostitute who was murdered in her 2nd floor room by a customer. While she's very affectionate with the male employees, she can be quite mean to the women, throwing things at them or pulling their hair.
According to the stories of the building, a lady of the evening got murdered right here in this room, which got her throat slit in this room here. We do not know why this happens, but they say if you come by here at 2 o'clock in the morning, you can see her ghost on the window.
This is one of the smaller dining rooms here at the Tavern. It's also the room that has probably the most, shall we say, colorful history. One of the best known stories about the Tavern occurred right in here. It seems that in the Tavern's past, it's been a place where, shall we say, the working girls would come out. And this was the bedroom of one of the more, shall we say, prolific ones. Well, she was downstairs one afternoon and 3 men came riding into town. One of them caught her fancy. They came upstairs to negotiate and the other 2 were left downstairs drinking at the bar. Well, all the men who were downstairs playing poker and having a drink suddenly heard a scream from this general vicinity. They came pounding up the stairs, broke through the door that was right here, and lying in the middle of this floor, they found that young woman. Her throat had been slit. The last word that she was able to mouth was the name of the man who had followed her up the stairs. Well, now everyone sitting downstairs had seen him follow her up, but no one had seen him come down. So they searched the entire floor here at the Tavern. They searched the building. They searched the grounds. They never found him. It was as if he had fallen off the face of the earth. Well, I can tell you this. He may have disappeared, but she has not. I don't know what her name is, but I call her the Tavern Tart.
During a session to try to elicit communication from the spirit of the unnamed lady of the evening, investigators and news crew heard a muffled voice coming from some unknown location. An extensive search revealed no rational source for the voice. In parapsychology, a discarnate voice is called a direct voice.
Why did he feel the need to kill you? How old are you?
We are now on the second floor of the Tavern, in the room where it is rumored that Stephen Alonzo Jackson and Captain Rife had an altercation in the 1880s. Jackson supposedly walked in and found Rife with his wife, and he shot him. The altercation started in this room and ended up outside. It has been rumored that Rife makes his appearance known in this room as well as other rooms in the tavern from time to time.
The story of his death has been disputed. I was taught one way growing up, or not necessarily taught, but I was told. But then, as coincidence would have it, in a lodge meeting just this past year, a brother from Dickinson County over in the coal fields was sitting in on a history lesson program what I was doing, and was telling the story about Jackson and his importance to the lodge and whatnot, and to the Kappa Sigma fraternity. And he, I noticed his ears kind of perked up when I was telling the story that I had heard, which was that he had been messing around with a gentleman's wife, and this gentleman approached him at the tavern in Abingdon, and they went outside arguing, and Jackson shot him. Drug him to the courthouse steps, left him on the steps, and then walked home. Never denied the fact that he had shot the man. Went to jail, of course. Was tried for murder, was acquitted, had to pay $10,000. So after the lodge meeting, he came up to me and told me that he was a member of the lodge in Dickinson County and had cousins who were members of a less prestigious group, the Ku Klux Klan, in that area of the state. And that story had run through their history throughout the years, and it was pretty popular. But it wasn't exactly what I had heard. What they had heard, and what is sort of recorded in some of their meetings and whatnot, is that Jackson, in fact, was noble and hadn't been messing around with Mr. Rife's wife, and that it was Mr. Rife that had accosted Jackson's wife over the fact that Jackson had been approached by Rife to supply Rife and some of his guerrilla fighters with equipment and supplies that they could use, because I guess you could say in that part of eastern Kentucky and southwest Virginia they hadn't let go of the Civil War. It was still going on to them, and Jackson refused to supply them, and so as sort of a revenge item, Rife approached Jackson's wife. May or may not have had relations with her, but the approach was there. We do know that much. And they were together at the tavern one night, and Jackson, of course, and he got into an argument, went outside, and then from the rest of that story, it's pretty much as I had heard. Jackson ended up shooting him for whatever reason, and took him to the steps and left him as justice served, and walked home, I guess. Or he may have gone back and had his drink and finished it, or maybe had a couple more, but the night was over, I guess. And so And then the court proceedings went on, and that was in 1880. In 1891, Jackson maybe he felt time had passed long enough that he was safer to travel through certain areas of Kentucky and Virginia, and was on a train in eastern Kentucky, and was the story I had heard was that the train had stopped and a very large woman had fallen on him and crushed his skull. And having played football all my life and having large people fall on me, I know that's not too easy to do, even with a helmet. But again, the gentleman from Holefield is sort of a conspiracy, and that she was a madam at a brothel that Rife was a patron of, I guess, and maybe one of the bigger patrons, and that she and some other members of the clan in that area were out for revenge, no matter how long it took. And they found their opportunity, and she was involved in the conspiracy in that while he was asleep, the men beat him with a club, crushed his skull, and then they left him until the train stopped and she acted as if she had fallen on him. She disappeared, no one ever got her name or anything, but Jackson was rushed to Abingdon by train, and 4 days later he died of fever from brain damage related injuries. So that's pretty much the story. Too conflicting, but having just out of the thin air this person telling me this, and knowing that it's somewhat similar to what I had heard originally, it makes some sense. And I'd always wondered, that's kind of odd having a large woman fall on you, and that's the way you die after you've lived somewhat of a noble life. This sounds, I guess, more romantic, more noble death or whatever, but maybe because he didn't help the clan in their negative activities that he may have died for that.
During our investigation at the room where Stephen Alonzo Jackson and Captain Gordon William Rife allegedly had an altercation, a voice can be heard saying, "I was pretty upset when I saw that." After investigator Tammy finished this shoot for WJHL-TV, an inexplicable male voice can clearly be heard on audio saying, "I'm not gone yet."
We are now in the poker room, where it is alleged that a card game went bad, and it resulted in the death of a tavern patron. We're going to do some EVPs now and see if we can get some confirmation on this event.
While investigators were on the stairs, the unimaginable happened in the poker room. A chair scooted away from the table and tilted back on its own. Such physical manifestations of spiritual activity are rare.
On the stairs.
Because I don't think my ankle's going to
Do you need a camera?
Do you guys have a recorder?
I have a recorder. I was thinking on the stairs.